What if the reason you can't let them go isn't because they the love of your life? What if the reason you think about them constantly, wait for their messages, feel anxious when they pull away, and feel an overwhelming sense of relief when they finally come back isn't love? What if it's a pattern your nervous system has learned to recognize? Because sometimes we call something love when what we actually feeling is anxiety. We call it chemistry when we are constantly waiting for their attention. We call it passion when the relationship is filled with emotional highs and lows. And we call it a deep connection when we are actually terrified of being abandoned. So today we're talking about a difficult question. Is it love or is it trauma? Welcome back to Wise Hill. This channel is about understanding how childhood and family experiences can shape the way you think, feel, relate, and connect, and how we can begin healing the pattern that no longer serve us. Before we begin, I want to be clear. This video isn't saying that love isn't real, and it isn't saying that every difficult relationship is a trauma bond or a trauma response. Relationships are complicated, but sometimes people who have experienced emotional inconsistency, rejection, unpredictability, or unhealthy relationship patterns growing up may confuse familiar emotional experiences with love. And understanding the difference can change the way we see our relationship. Think about the person you can't stop thinking about. Do you feel calm around them? Or do you feel emotionally safe? Or do you spend most of your time wondering, do they like me or do they still like me? Why haven't they texting me back? Did I do something wrong? Are they pulling away? What can I do to make them stay? Sometimes we mistake constant emotional activation for deep love, but constantly worrying about someone isn't necessarily intimacy. Constantly checking your phone isn't necessarily connection. Feeling sick when they don't respond isn't necessarily passion. Sometimes it's anxiety. And if you grew up in an environment where love felt unpredictable, anxiety may feel strangely familiar. Your body may have learned that caring about someone means waiting, worrying, trying harder, earning attention, never knowing where you stand. So when you meet someone who creates those same feelings, part of you think or may think that this feels important. But important and healthy aren't always the same thing. And chaos can feel like chemistry. One day, they make you feel like you are the most important person in the world. And the next day, they feel distant. Then they come back, and suddenly you feel relieved. The relationship becomes a cycle: closeness, distance, anxiety, and relief. And because the emotional highs feel so powerful, you may believe, I've never felt anything like this before. But intensity isn't always intimacy. Chaos isn't always chemistry, and emotional pain isn't proof that the connection is deep. Sometimes what feels like chemistry is your nervous system reacting to unpredictability. You are not feeling close, you are not feeling activated, and there is a difference. You're feeling activated. You are not feeling close to them. You're feeling activated because of all the emotional gymnastics, and there is a difference. Ask yourself this: do you feel like you have to work for their love? Or do you keep trying to prove that you are worth choosing? Do you change yourself to become what they want? Do you give more and more, hoping that eventually they will give the same back? Sometimes the relationship isn't about being loved, it's about trying to finally win love. And if you grow up feeling like love had to be earned, this pattern can feel familiar. Maybe you learn, if I'm good enough, they will love me. If I don't cause problems, they'll stay. If I take care of everyone else, I'll be needed. If I try harder, they will finally choose me. And then as an adult, you may find yourself repeating the same emotional pattern with someone new. Not because you want to suffer, but because part of you is still hoping for a different ending. You don't miss them, you miss the relief that you feel when they come back. And of this is one of the hardest thing to recognize. Sometimes you think you miss them or you miss the person, but what you actually miss is the feeling you get when they finally come back. They disappear, you panic, you overthink, you feel rejected. Then they call, they text, they give you attention again, and suddenly you feel relief. That relief can feel incredibly powerful. It can feel like love. But ask yourself, do I feel peaceful when I'm with this person? Or do I mostly feel relief when the anxiety temporarily stops? Because if someone repeatedly creates the pain and then becomes the source of comfort from that pain, the emotional cycle can become incredibly difficult to live. Maybe you're not holding on to who they are. Maybe you are holding on to who you believe they could become. You remember the good moments. You remember what they said. You remember who they were in the beginning. And you are keeping thinking. You keep thinking if they could just go back to being that person. So you wait. You give another chance. You forgive. You tell yourself that things will change. But healing sometimes requires asking a painful question. Am I in love with this person or am I in love with their potential? Because potential cannot hold you. Potential cannot communicate constantly. Potential cannot meet your needs. A relationship has to be evaluated based on what is actually happening now, not only what you hope will happen someday. And after some times, healthy love may feel less intense at first. This can be confusing when you are healing. Someone healthy enters your life, they consistent, they communicate, they don't disappear. You know where you stand with them. They respect your boundaries. And instead of feeling immediately excited, you may think something is missing. There's no connection, there's no spark. Why doesn't feel as intense? Why am I not constantly thinking about them? But maybe you're not constantly thinking about them because you are not constantly worried about them. Maybe you're not obsessed because you are not trying to solve uncertainty. Maybe you don't feel sick with anxiety because your body isn't constantly waiting for something to go wrong. Peace can feel unfamiliar when chaos was normal. That doesn't mean every calm relationship is right for you, neither. But it can be worth asking, do I miss chaos or do I genuinely miss connection? Let's discuss how you can feel the difference. So, how do you begin asking whether something is love or a trauma pattern? The first one is just ask yourself this question. When I'm with this person, do I feel safe being myself? Can I express myself or my need freely without being afraid? Do I know where I stand or am I constantly guessing? Do their actions match their words? Do I feel respected when I set boundaries? And am I choosing them or am I trying to win them? Do I feel peaceful more often than anxious? Do I love who they are or who I hope they will become? These questions aren't meant to judge you. They meant to help you become curious about your patterns because awareness gives you a choice. Real love doesn't require self-abandonment. Real healthy love doesn't require you to disappear. You shouldn't have to abandon your needs to keep someone. You shouldn't have to become smaller to make someone comfortable. You shouldn't have to constantly prove your worth and you shouldn't have to live in fear that one wrong move will make someone leave. Healthy love doesn't mean there will never be conflict. It doesn't mean you'll never feel hurt. But healthy or a healthy relationship should leave room for you to exist as a whole person. And to be able to have needs, to be able also to hold your boundaries. You can disagree, you can be honest, you can take up space, you can also be your true self. Love should not require you to betray yourself just to keep someone else close. If you've confused anxiety with love, if you've confused chaos with chemistry, if you spent years trying to earn someone's affection, please don't shame yourself. Your patterns may have made sense based on what you learned, but what is familiar doesn't have to become your future. You can learn that consistency isn't boring, peace isn't emptiness, boundaries aren't rejections, and love doesn't have to hurt in order to feel real. Maybe the question isn't, how do I make them love me? Maybe the question is, why am I willing to lose myself trying to make them or to keep them, to make them stay or to keep them? And that question can be the beginning of healing. Is this video help you see one of your relationship patterns differently? Subscribe to Rise Heal. Here, we talk about childhood and family trauma, relationship pattern, people pleasing, boundaries, nervous system healing, self worth, and learning how to move from surviving to healing. And I want to ask you, have you ever mistaken anxiety, obsession, or chaos for love? You can simply comment, I'm learning the difference. And remember, familiar doesn't always mean safe. Intensity doesn't always mean love. And you don't have to lose yourself to be loved. And I'll see you guys in the next video.